Well, years ago, I wrote a book called Life After Television. And in that book, I said that this is in 1990, and in that book, I said that the computer of the future would be as portable as your watch, as personal as your wallet. It would recognize speech. It would navigate streets. It would collect your news and your mail. It just might not do windows. But it would open doors to your future, doors of perception. I also said in that book that in the future, dominated by the internet, no one would ever have to see any ads they didn't want to see anymore. And that didn't quite happen. And what we're finding now is the fundamental insight that ads are actually minuses unless they are really well targeted, is being discovered by Google. Nobody really wants to see an ad before they look at their YouTube video. These are value subtracted ads, minuses, and it's not a sustainable model. And it's the heart of Google's whole economy. It's aggregate and advertise. And they are capturing your data and your content and subtracting their profits rather than really contributing them. Free goods are not really goods. Goods entail a real relationship with the customer. They entail price discovery, which is the crucial learning process in an expanding capitalist economy. They entail liabilities to customers. They entail perfecting your goods rather than just releasing your betas. And Google continually shrinks from the process of actually entering the capitalist economy and testing themselves against the market. They're a great company, but they need a new business plan and aggregate and advertise and free goods to keep out the competition. Nobody can compete with free, is not tenable. But even more important is the failure of security. Google thinks security is a matter of the Google SWAT teams. You know, Wired magazine has an article this month on Google SWAT teams. But security is not a video game. It's an architecture. And to try to patch security retroactively is futile. You know, they're trying to re-centralize the internet to create safe spaces for transactions. But we're discovering that centralization is not safe. And it creates all sorts of irresistible attractions to hackers. It isolates the honeypots of most crucial data and just begs to be hacked. Further, internet fiefdoms are not sustainable. You know, if Larry Page and Sergey Brin, two nerds in Silicon Valley, can have their whole internet fiefdom, and Mark Zuckerberg can have another one, and Bezos can have another one. What about the people of China? Can't China have its own fiefdom? And how about the mullahs of Iran? And certainly the EU can have its fiefdom. And so the result of this assertion of increasing control over a segmented internet breaks down, and as Google is discovering, having been driven out of China and now virtually being driven out of Europe. So the Google model doesn't work. We need a new next generation internet. And I think we're getting it with Blockstack, and it's a cadastre economy. Cadastre is the old word for blockchain. It's a ledger that contains all the goods and services, the assets in a particular community from the Middle Ages. And I think cadastre should be retrieved for our economy. Well, what are the key principles? One is that it's logically centralized. There's one view of state, but no central control. And that's really the definition of the blockchain. As Munib says, it's the most sophisticated and complex, yet elegant and beautiful technology I've ever run across. And it is indeed a major insight and breakthrough worthy of a new renaissance. Another principle that's crucial, that hasn't been understood completely by the blockchain community, is to separate the control plane from the data plane. This is a fundamental principle of networking, but it hasn't been grasped fully by Ethereum and other cluttered and complex blockchain endeavors. And I think that this is a brilliant insight of Blockstack, is to separate the control plane from the data plane. Makes it the scalable system that is completely can improve with the advance of technology, even faster than the advance of technology. And there are all sorts of wonderful security technologies, hardware technologies being developed. There's a company called Genetics that's learned how to do private keys through the fluctuations in the molecules in microchips. So they get pure random numbers in microchips for private keys. This is Genetics Corporation. There are a lot of other really fascinating advances in security that will feed into the Blockstack adventure. And a third is that a new architecture must be compatible with the old architecture. It must be able to grow without directly displacing or confronting the established powers. And we learned this lesson in politics a few years back. The Russians and Chinese did different paths to liberalization. The Russians tried to liberate their economy from the center, issuing perestroika across the land. And this meant that all the forces that were threatened by the change all would mobilize against it. It maximized opposition. Well, in China, they followed the opposite strategy. They created free zones all along following the example of Hong Kong. And all the forces worked to expand the free zones. All the activity happened in the free zones. Everybody wanted to get into the free zones. And so China actually could create a thriving capitalist economy while Russia has staggered from the outset. And I think that the genius of Blockstack is that it transforms the existing internet into a kind of utility to feed the Blockstack system. But the Blockstack system begins quietly. As more and more people claim their rights to their identities and to their data, they will increasingly exert pressure and shape the established companies. But they are not directly throwing down the gauntlet to the old order, and that makes it possible for it to grow. And a final point comes from information theory. I've written 2 or 3 books now about information theory, applying it to economics. And one of the key principles is it takes a low entropy carrier, that's a carrier with no surprises, to bear high entropy creativity and messages. And that is fundamental. And again, the blockchain is the low entropy carrier that can enable all sorts of creativity on top of it. It's not the whole solution. It's a source of trust and truth. It's a root of trust and truth. But you shouldn't make the blockchain perform functions that it can't perform. And I was involved in the Java movement for a long time. And I think that the virtual chains that Jude Nelson created for Blockstack are similar to the virtual machines, the Java virtual machines that enable portability across all the browsers. And this virtual chains enables portability across all the blockchains. And it's already been demonstrated with the move from Namecoin to Bitcoin, of course. So this is a tremendous feature of an invention of Blockstack that makes them vitally important. So in Life After Television, I spoke about the overthrow of all the principles and powers, pyramids and power grids of the existing establishment. And now I think it didn't happen, but now Blockstack can really lead a movement along with people like Brendan Eich. I'm going down to see Brendan Eich and write about his Brave browser, which is a great contributor to this movement of a new internet. And they are going to overthrow this so-called winner-take-all internet and make it an internet where we can all be winners again. Thank you.